Good morning, everybody. I'm Brandy Kelly, and I'm a superintendent on a mission to lead with hope and help my fellow educators do the same. The Lead with Hope podcast is a bi weekly podcast that will inspire and empower you to lead with hope. Check out my website at leadwithhope.net. This morning, I am excited to welcome Jill Siler. She is a leader, an author, and a speaker. Jill has been serving as an educator for 25 years, beginning her career as a high school social studies teacher and a coach before she became a campus and district leader. Jill has a passion for impacting others and has been a frequent speaker to teacher and leaders alike. So, Jill, I just finished your book and I loved every page of it. I'm excited to have you on this morning, and I'd like to start out with you sharing your story, telling us who you are and why you became an educator.
Well, Brandy, it is great to be with you this morning, and thank you so much for your kind words about my book. I loved writing it, and it's been great to be able to share that message with lots of educators and everyone else out there alike. So, I began my career just like you said about 25 years ago in public education, and to be honest, I wasn't even planning on going into education. I really was in this world of politics and all these things. And right before I went to grad school, I got an opportunity to teach and coach at a summer camp, teaching and coaching high school girls, and completely fell in love. And so while I started my trek still onto graduate school for some other areas of study, quickly transitioned into teaching and just absolutely fell in love with the profession. I've been a paraprofessional, a teacher, a coach, a campus leader, district leader, had the great opportunity to serve as superintendent for almost 10 years. And now I do this work at the state level, helping raise up other leaders around the state of Texas. So it's great to be with you this morning.
That sounds wonderful. And I am so excited to delve into more about your book and also to learn more about who you are. My Lead with Hope philosophy is just a system of self-efficacy. And H stands for habits, O for optimistic outlook, P for passion, purpose, and perseverance, and E for excellence. So, Jill, what resonates with you most and why?
So, first of all, I love your construct and I love the notion of hope. And I think sometimes hope gets a bad rap. We hear a lot of people talk sometimes like hope is not a strategy. And I totally get that. But
Mhm.
I, first of all, think that hope is absolutely essential in leadership. Hope is essential in this life, in this work that we do, especially in the profession that we're in. But I also love how you wrap such tangible concepts around it because it's not just something that we hope for on a whim. It is so full of important critical things from a leadership perspective. So I love how you outline that. So it's hard for me to pick one. And so can I pick two? Can we do that?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
So the first one that I want to start with is your habits and just that letter of H. And it really draws me back to our leadership matters. The decisions that we make matter, whether we're leading in the classroom with our students, whether we're leading on a campus with teachers, whether we're leading district wide, those decisions matter. And they come from habits, right? If we're faithful in the little things and we have excellence in the little things, that's going to translate into the big things. And so, one of the quotes that I've been kind of grappling with and mulling with lately is one by John Maxwell. And he shares this about just how do we judge our actions? How do we judge our habits? And I thought it was so insightful. And so I thought I'd share it with you this morning. He says, most people use two totally different sets of criteria for judging themselves versus others. We tend to judge others according to their actions. It's very cut and dry. However, we judge ourselves by our intentions. Even if we do the wrong thing, we believe our motives were good. We let ourselves off the hook, and we're often willing to do that over and over again before requiring ourselves to change. And so, twofold, as I think about your H with this notion of habits and the decisions that we're making on the daily, I think of it twofold. One, there is that personal responsibility to what we choose to do and what we choose to not do or to even tolerate in our organizations. And then I loved John Maxwell's spin on this notion that we tend to judge others by their actions, but ourselves by our intentions. So, how can we really hold ourselves personally accountable for our own actions and make sure that that H, that habits, is being prolonged in our work? And so that was one of my first just reflections from you. I don't know if you've heard that quote from Maxwell or kind of what your thoughts were on that.
I have heard that quote from Maxwell, and I love that quote. John Maxwell's work is so powerful, and I enjoy his books. I enjoy his quotes. I do his Minute with Maxwell, and it really does help me to have the strength to do this work. It gives me that, um, I don't know, just reboot every day. I listen to A Minute with Maxwell, and it reminds me what the important things are. As we're recording this episode, it's January, and I'm in Illinois. I know you served as a superintendent in Texas. In Illinois, in January, we have a lot of um, weather. Right now, we are in the
Yeah.
deep freeze, right? So this last week was tough. It was a lot of long hours because I was watching the weather. I was trying to make the best call for my students, my staff, my families. And the interesting thing about leadership is no matter what call you make, you're going to have those critics. And one of the habits I have fallen prey to, and I think many of us do, I get on social media
Mm.
and I'm calling them Facebook fans because everybody has an opinion about the calls that I make, whether they're right, wrong, or indifferent. And unfortunately, when your Facebook fans go to social media and they share their thoughts, I'm learning that I have to do is I have to break that habit of getting on social media and reading that what those critics are saying about me and spend my time in the more impactful ways, which is serving others and leading others.
Yeah, and I love, how well, first of all, that whole social media is such a challenge. I think
Mhm.
about leadership today versus leadership 15 years ago, and there's not even a comparison. But I loved how you talked about just the decisions that you make, and that there are certain decisions out there that no matter what we decide, there's going to be critics that fall on both sides. And the hard part is that you are the only person who's sitting in the seat. You are the only one that has that availability of information, whether it's plentiful or not, right? Because we can't see into the future to make that decision. And sometimes I think as leaders, we fall into this habit of judging our decisions with hindsight, right? And hindsight can be 2020, but we don't have all of those facts in the moment. And so we can't use that hindsight as this destructive weapon, but rather this piece of learning for the future. And so, yeah, great thoughts on that. Woo, the snow and weather decisions are some of the toughest.
They are. They are so tough. But, we do what's best for kids. That is what our goal is. That's always the bullseye. And so that's what I'll continue to do as we move forward with the information that I have. So, what is your other, the letter that resonates with you, Jill?
Yeah, so I had to choose 2, and I really have to talk about optimism
Mm.
because, not only is it so important, but I also think we have to have a healthy perspective of it. One of my other favorite motivational writers is
Mhm.
John Gordon, and he talks, a lot about hope. He talks a lot about positive, and one of my favorite books is The Power of Positive Leadership. And the reason why that book is so powerful to me is because he is really clear from the onset. This is not about Pollyanna positivity. And I think sometimes as leaders, we can fall into this easy notion, this mindset that we have to be the positive leader at all times in all situations. And while that's true, right, there does have to be this element of hope there. There also has to be this element of brutal reality. And so that leads me to one of my other favorite quotes by Admiral James Stockdale. And he was one of the highest ranking prisoners of war in the Vietnam War. And he made it back after many, many years. And when he came back after being a prisoner of war, they asked him, why was it that some people made it back and some people didn't? And he said, really clearly, some of the people who didn't make it back were those who were the most optimistic. We're going to be back by 4th of July. We're going to be back by Labor Day. We're going to be back by Thanksgiving. We're going to be back by Christmas. And the truth was, it was this brutal 8 years of this harsh existence. And he shared this quote, and I want to share it to you and your listeners as well. He said, you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you cannot afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they may be. And I love that from a leadership perspective because it does just those two things. This is not about Pollyanna positivity. Everything is awesome because we both know it is not, especially in some of those dark days in January, in the busyness of April and May. There are tough times for educators and leaders. But just like Admiral Stockdale said, we can't confuse faith that we're going to prevail in the end, which is our responsibility to lead. That's what leading with hope is, with this assurance and confidence that no matter how difficult this is, we are going to get to the other side. And we can't confuse that with also having that discipline to confront the most brutal facts of the reality, whatever they may be. And that's kind of what I thought about when you shared that O for optimism.
Yes, I love that. That is powerful. And I think that when we think about leadership, faith, hope, love, we are leading people.
Mm,
People are the most important part of the equation here. And we have to lead with faith, hope, and love each and every day in the good times and the bad times. And so that quote really hit home for me. Thank you for sharing that this morning.
love that.
Yes. So, how do you right now in your life lead with hope?
I think, the words that you just said in terms of faith, hope, and love are really some of the driving forces. This work that we have in front of us is tough. Right now, I'm supporting leaders. And to be honest, I'm seeing so many leaders step out of their roles after having lived a legacy of leadership or just making a change to do something else. We see that with educators too. And so, how do we share this hope with the people that we're working with to continue on to do the work that they're doing? And with that, I think that part of it is what we've talked about, right? That we have to make good decisions and recognize that our leadership matters. Part of it is that we have to have, just that brutal reality to understand what it is that we're facing, to give it the time that it needs, whether that's to, we have a really difficult issue and we're just going to take a few minutes just to be really upset about it, to really grieve the situation that's facing us. And then after we've given it a few minutes, okay, now let's pull together some people and figure out how we're going to move forward, just kind of one step at a time. So I think it's keeping those things in balance. What is our main purpose, which I know is one of your P's in your framework?
Mhm.
What's our main purpose, and how do we make sure that we're continuing to move forward, not only the people that we're leading, but ourselves too. And we do that when we come back to the things that are the most important to us, that hope, that faith, that love that you talked about.
Mhm. Absolutely. And with P, you talked about it at the beginning when you were sharing your story, um, your purpose, your calling. That's why you're in education. And we don't
Mhm,
always see that at the onset. It takes a little time. And I do believe that God reveals that to us in the right time. And many educators go into the field because they do feel it's a calling for them, for their life,
mhm.
and they're fulfilling their purpose. So when you think about your purpose and your passion, I know writing this book has been part of that. And you've shared your story in the book. You've shared so many tidbits of experience and some insightful stories and the lessons that you've learned through leadership. But tell us, and I'm going to ask a hard question, I think, but we're both females, right? And
Mhm.
in the superintendency, we are still in the minority, even though in education, women make up the majority of the field. So, what would you say to other women who are either in the superintendency or contemplating getting into the superintendency to lead in this tough landscape?
It is a tough question, but it's a necessary question. And the answer that I would share is that their leadership is needed. I don't know that we've ever had a more nuanced, complicated, complex sort of environment to sift through. And
Mhm.
there are such strong characteristics that women bring to the table in terms of leadership that will help districts thrive during this time. So my question then comes back, if we are equipped, if we've seen just example after example of stellar women doing incredible work, and I've certainly seen that in Texas and across the country, then the question is, why isn't that happening more? And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that for sure. But I'll tell you from my own personal experience, I was probably the biggest barrier to that. And I think that there's a lot of research behind that as well. We read the research that, if a guy looks at a job description and can do 50%, they're like, I'm all in. And if a woman looks at that same job description and can do 95%, they're like, all right, well, I got to learn the 5% first, right? So, how do we get out of our own way? And part of it for me was recognizing that fear and self doubt and angst and imposter syndrome, all of that really does play a role.
Mhm.
And I used to think that if I was having these feelings of angst, one of your questions on your list for our discussion today is, talk about your upcoming project. And I'm already kind of having angstful thoughts, like I don't really want to talk about it because I'm not making very much progress on this project, right? But those feelings of doubt and angst, I used to think if I was feeling those, like that must be a sign that I'm not ready.
Mhm.
And I need to then wait for those feelings to pass. And when they do, that will be the sign that I'm ready to step into this thing to which I feel like I'm being called.
Mhm.
But what I've learned is that that's not truth, right? Those feelings, that self doubt, that angst, that fear can envelop us. But our job is to rely on the evidence that we've seen, people pouring into us, the work that we've done in our past, all of the things that have led us to this very point to continue taking those small but steady steps forward
Mhm.
because the fear is not going to go away. What's going to happen is we're going to take steps through it and lead through it anyways and see the great things that come on the other side of it.
Yeah. And using my system of self efficacy, hope is a strategy. It's a verb. It's
Absolutely.
something that we're going to do to be able to push through and to be better for it and to help others be better as well, which is the ultimate goal. So we're at the point in the show where I want you to talk about your recent project. And I'm excited to hear about it. And I know it's going to be great because everything I've seen and heard from you, Jill, I have been blown away by. You are an impressive.
Mm.
So please share your recent
Well,
project.
thank you. So I'm going to tell you about a professional project I was super excited about, and then I'm going to talk a little bit personally as well. So professionally, one of the things I get to do in my role is to lead other leaders, and we do that in a lot of ways. We run conferences and professional learning experiences, but one of the things that I loved was being a superintendent of a small school district. My district, when I started, had about 650 students, and when I left, it was just at 1,000, but over half, more than half of the districts in Texas are very small like that. And so, in this new role at the state level, we started a small schools network where we brought leaders together from all of the small schools across the state and really allowed them time to come together and brainstorm around the challenges that were specific to them. And I love creating and designing this learning experience that really connects people in a meaningful and authentic way. And so we did campus visits, we shared best practices, we did all sorts of things, but mainly brought people together to learn and to connect with one another and to be encouraged and to be given hope by seeing these incredible things that these small school district leaders were doing at their schools. And so that's my professional point of pride in terms of just the most recent project I've been involved in. And then the one that I shared that had a little bit of angst to it would be that it is time. Like it's time for me to start writing again. And it's interesting. Book number one was so easy. Although it was a ton of work, it was so easy to bring to life. And here I am in this place of knowing, okay, it's been a couple of years. Like it is time. You have new things to share, and the amount of fear and reservation and hesitation that I have around it is immense. And the irony of it is that I want to write this book around that very thing. How do
Yeah.
you overcome those feelings to step into this life to which you've been called? And so that's
Mhm.
my current project. And any people who have written and have tackled that second book might know kind of the feelings around that too.
Yeah, that's exciting. And like I said before, I just finished your first book. So, yeah, I agree. It's time for you to write that second book and get it out there.
Okay, I'll get right on there.
All right, Jill, as we wrap up today, can you tell our listeners, how can they connect with you if they want to hear more from you?
Yeah, so my website is jillmsiler.com, and I'm on all the social media platforms at the same handle, Jill M. Siler, and I would love to connect with your listeners.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today. It has been a blast talking with you, and I look forward to following you and seeing what you are going to bring to us in the future.
Great. Thanks so much, Brandy.
Thank you.